In 2024, samples have not only helped people craft hit records, but have also changed lives. They now benefit not just major labels and independent artists, but also Fortune 500 companies and, of course, the sample makers themselves. If you look at some of the biggest artists in the world and some of their biggest songs, 9 times out of 10, there's a sample or a loop involved. Today, I'm excited to talk to a collective that's not only behind huge records with big legends, but also rank among the top selling sample makers on Splice. That collective's name is Soul Surplus. I'm gonna be asking them all kinds of things, such as how to build a successful sample making business, the pros and cons of royalty-free music, what makes a good sample, and hopefully they'll even break down a famous sample for us and drop some gems along the way. But before we dive into that conversation, it's important to reflect on the rise of sample makers and their profound impact on modern music. But first, when did the rise of sample makers start? The rise of sampling music traces back to its hip-hop roots in the 1970s, where producers would loop breaks from vinyl records to create new beats. As technology advanced, sampling became easier with the invention of drum machines like the Akai MPC in the 1980s, and softwares like FL Studio and Ableton in the early 2000s. During that time, while it was more common to sample master recordings, it wasn't common to make original compositions. In fact, it's become documented that producers like Ken Lewis played a pivotal role in Kanye West's The College Dropout by meticulously recreating samples to match the original feel, allowing the team to clear the master recordings without copyright issues. This approach preserved the essence of vintage sounds while avoiding the costly and time-consuming process of licensing original tracks. But how does that work? I'll let DJ Mustard explain interpolation.
Sorry to cut you off. For people who don't understand, why would you replay versus sample?
Because they can take less money. They will take all your money if you sample the master track, they will take all your money. But if you replay it like this, they can't take all of it, because it's only an interpolation.
The new wave of producers emerged in the 2010s as independent producers started creating original loop packs and melodies for others to sample. This movement was driven by platforms like Splice, Tracklib, and other online marketplaces, which democratized access to high-quality loops and original compositions. Producers such as Q-Beats, Frank Dukes, Des Wright, and the collective Soul Surplus became influential, blending live instrumentation, analog synthesizers, and digital sounds to offer royalty-free loops by bypassing copyright restrictions from older sampled records. Now, they don't only create royalty-free loops for platforms like Splice to make a profit online. They also provide industry producers with non-royalty-free exclusive loops to land placements on major albums, which increases their catalog. Today, sample makers play a crucial role in genres like trap, R&B, EDM, and pop, with loops becoming a foundation for hits by artists like Travis Scott, Kendrick Lamar, Drake, and many more. This collaborative shift has transformed modern music production, giving rise to the culture where sampling no longer solely relies on older music, but on fresh, original material. Now, I think it's time we talk to the Soul Surplus guys. Today, we're joined by Soul Surplus. How are you guys doing?
Doing very good.
Man, everybody got a keyboard in the bag. So I'm gonna ask you guys a couple questions, and hopefully the people watching, they get some game, they apply it, because I feel like that's the most important part. How did you guys form Soul Surplus?
Back in 2016, a good friend of ours, Wes Pendleton, who's an amazing producer in his own right, he actually came to us, was like, hey, I have this idea. And as a background, which I know we'll get into, we knew each other. One, met him at his father's church. Two, we knew him in like the hip hop community, and even more specifically, it was a Christian hip hop community. We knew him as an amazing producer, and we were like coming up in that as musicians and producers. But he came to us with an idea like, hey man, I just was thinking about selling our own samples online because, I'm a sample-based producer. We're all sample-based producers, and we're tired of not being able to sample stuff. So y'all are musicians, like why don't y'all just play the stuff? So it started as us just trying to make a little extra money online to sell the samples we were already making. So from 2016, we're talking about making samples in a living room of a row home in Philly to then having our own office out in PA, and some more members coming on, Smythe being one of the most incredible folks to jump in, who we knew also from just the scene and playing music. Our heads were down, making a lot of music.
What a canon event. A conversation with somebody sparked an idea, and then it's literally helped change your guys' life.
Just to add to that, initially we were cranking a lot of stuff out with plugins, and then fast forward a few years later, everything was kind of like moving more towards analog or a mixture of analog instruments, actual instruments, and more plugins. But I would just add that it was cool seeing that initially. We kind of just started at the ground. Like whatever we had, we just used it. We made the best stuff we could make, or at least I think so, with what we had.
How about you, Smythe?
I think something can be said for the fact that I feel like we already had a natural affinity for soul music. It was as natural as it was for us even playing together while we were on stage.
Teamwork. It really was a team because it just wasn't just us. We had Pudge Tribbett, Eleazar, Swoop, and Dave James, our homie Whip, recording us early on, still recording us now. Our whole crew who already was making music together just came together and really just superpowered this thing.
You guys are a great example of teamwork really does make the dream work. And definitely shout out to all the other members, because man, you were telling me all the members, I'm like, damn, this sounds like some like Wu-Tang Clan type of shit.
Literally.
You guys mentioned that you've grown up in Philly. You know, Philly has such a rich history and culture, and it's birthed so many stars, from Hall & Oates, Jill Scott, Boyz II Men, Freeway, Beanie Siegel, Meek Mill, Lil Uzi Vert. How has Philly's rich history and culture shaped and influenced your music?
I think everyone that lives in the Philly area kind of adapts to like a pocket that we have. There's like a pocket and a soulful vibe to everything. Obviously, the neo soul, that whole era was super heavy in Philly, especially around like the early 2000s time. Even I think the artists that come from here, like the rappers and some of the singers, like there's a feeling that you feel when you listen to their music. And I think that's influenced every musician in the Philly area, not just Philly, like South Jersey, you got Delaware. There's tons of crazy dudes that have come from the general Philly area and that have been influenced from that soulful feel that comes out of the city.
I'll say this, I don't claim Philly in any way besides music. I claim Jersey. But I realized even from an early age, like my parents are from New York, but my dad always would play the Delphonics, another group from Philly. My dad always played the Stylistics, you know, another group from Philly. That's why coming into Soul Surplus kind of felt natural, because Philly was my music scene, but before it became my music scene, I didn't even know that I was just in love with Philly soul. To me, Philly soul starts in the 70s with Gamble and Huff, Larry Gold. I'm not sure if we've done a pack at his studio yet, but we've all worked out of Milk Boy, which was Larry Gold's studio at one point. Philly has legends in soul music. But yeah, coming into the music scene in my late teens and in my 20s, you learn to fit in with that pocket. Like, we were blessed to play with a keyboard player named Paris Bowens. Paris has videos up on his YouTube still about the Philly pocket. There really is a groove, and if you can't catch that groove, you can't play out here. That's kind of true.
Was there ever a point where you guys felt you had to conform to the trend of today, of whatever sound was going on? And how did you guys balance that?
I don't think it was really about conforming. I think it was more like thinking about like, hey, we were just trying to make some extra money and now we're a full-on business, and you know, you're serving different musicians and producers, and it was about having your ear to the streets a little bit and knowing what sounds are coming or what are people looking for, but still with like that soul DNA, like we just mentioned. Like, so we never were like forsaking ourselves for the DNA of what we are, but it was really just, you know, how can we make sounds from that kind of pathway or from that framework that are like appropriate for someone to download who's looking to make something that's hot right now.
If anything, it was cool to kind of hop around at different projects and different genres.
I feel like there was a hot moment. I want to say like 2019, 2020, 2021. I feel like we were the trend a little bit, you know?
Talk about it. Man, so it's safe to say that you guys find where you intersect with what's going on, so that way it doesn't compromise you and you're still able to like feed both your creative niche, but also what's going on in the market.
I'll say one more thing to that too. I think beyond soul, jazz and hip hop and rock, we run the gambit on this team. So that's also cool. We're lovers and play and listen to all kind of music.
My next question actually has to do with what you guys said earlier about you guys knowing each other from church. I've seen plenty of people say what's lacking in music today is church musicians, especially in R&B. Is that something that you guys would agree upon?
The thing about playing in church is that you get put in situations where you have to learn how to play anything like that. You know, you can be put in a situation where they get out in front and they're singing a song. You don't know what key it's in. You might not even know the song. All you have is your ears and your hands, and you have to know what to play. And so when you're put in that situation, you learn essentially how to create things on the spot. I also just think that the musicianship in general is what's missing. And again, I think that's why, like John was saying, it's a timeless aspect of what we do. I have confidence in music listeners that, you know, people who consume music don't always know what they want, but when you give them something good, they tend to gravitate towards it, you know?
I think there are a lot of spaces when it comes to like studio or hip hop or R&B music where musicians musicianship is highly valuable when it comes to creating the music, but it takes a special mind to be able to come from being a church musician to actually making a record. That's where like the producer hat has to be turned on. But I would say it goes both ways. Like the church could use it more producers, and then the producer world could use more musicians.
That's so interesting you say that, because there's definitely a balance, because there's been times where I've like worked with church musicians and it's like they're so crazy where it's like, okay, like this is a little too much for what we trying to do right now. Some things do need to be scaled back. You know, you look at Tyler the Creator and he's not a church musician, but he just loves chords and stuff, and he's like a big Neptunes fan. They're from the church. You hear bridges and you hear like just musicality in it. So you just gave me some insight. The next question I have, after all the samples that you guys have made and have become songs, Brent Faiyaz to Nas to Her, Summer Walker, and many more, what do you guys think makes a good sample?
I'm always constantly asking myself, what makes this a good sample when I'm making something, because I feel like I really don't know. And if I knew, I feel like I'd be a lot more successful, but things that just happen to work because I'm pulling from so much inspiration of music that I listen to. Like going back to, I used to play in this Delphonics cover band. I think there were one or two original members, and there was two other like newer guys. And I learned every single one of their songs. I learned the horn hits. I was playing aux for them. I learned every single Delphonics song front to back. And I was like 2015, 2014, I think. And then once we started in 2016, Soul Surplus, Wes was showing us like, yo, I just want to make like old soul music. Let's start there. And I'm like, I know exactly what you mean. Like I've been learning this stuff for the last year, and I know the stuff they were adding here. I know why they added harmonies on the horns here. And I'm pulling from all those experiences and trying to just filter it into just something that I like at the end of the day.
So what makes a good sample, I think, also is understanding both sides, where it's like, you know, the source material music that was being sampled, but then you know the desired end in sample-based music.
For me, it's melody. That's how I judge what I create. Melody, and then the clarity of the idea. If I create something and it's something that somebody could easily sing, or you could easily point it out and be like, okay, this song is in a major key. And obviously you don't have to know the difference between the keys, but you can tell the key or the mood of the song. The melody is this. It has a clear timbre, like there's guitar here, or, you know, as long as it feels like there's a clear idea, you should be able to hear it and be like, okay, this is soul. The lead instrument is this. The lead vocals are this. Okay. For me, that's how I judge what's good, is if it's clear.
Do you have any advice for like sample makers on the business side?
Aside from even being like a whole company like we were, I think it's just good to know, like, you as a producer, as a musician, you're a business whether you want to acknowledge it or not. So to really just have your stuff in order, have a vision, have a plan, get your finances in order, you know, pay your taxes, have a vision of how you want to do it. There's so many ways to go about it. You know, obviously we went the royalty free route. There's ways to do royalty bearing. Comes with its own problems. As a business, you'll know that you could be successful if you solve a problem for people. But I think my advice to, like, you know, sample makers or young producers and anyone trying to do it in the game is just, a clear vision of what they want. Because there's different ways to do this. The game is very different now than when we did it. So we probably wouldn't even have done it the same if we started right now. But there are some things that do kind of cross over, which is the things we mentioned, which is working together, finding folks you can work together with. You know, the old maxim or old proverb says, you know, you want to go fast, go alone, want to go far, go together. Link up with some folks, like, you know, who have a similar vision, similar plan. So yeah, that's just a little bit of my 2 cents.
Just remember what you're doing. Remember the value of what you're doing. Like if you value what you're doing, you're making music, you're taking time to go into your studio, gain stage stuff, mix stuff, bounce it down, get the pack compiled and whatnot. You're putting all this work into it just to send it to a bunch of people you don't even know. Like value your work, value the relationships, actually value the people you're working with, invest in those relationships, and value what you're doing. You're a producer at the end of the day. You're not just a sample maker, you're a producer, so value what you're doing.
Yeah, I think a good thing to do is, it's kind of a combination of what John and Joel said. You know, in this business, there's going to be, you really do have to fight for respect, but you should find early the people who do respect you and work with those people. Give somebody something to remember you by, you know, besides your music, because everybody can make dusty samples.
Even me, I find that like I reach for people that I've actually had like conversations with where it's like, oh, okay, like, yeah, you're cool. Like, well, you know, I'm more inclined inclined to go with you than a random email that somebody got from mine on a CC or BCC list.
Invest in people and invest in yourself. Music's the easy part. Anyone can sit in a room and get really good at something. Invest in your relationships. That'll take you places you never would imagine.
My last question that I have, and I feel like this will give a lot of people clarity. I wanted to get into the royalty-free stuff. If you guys would share your opinion on royalty-free, it would clear up a lot of misconceptions about royalty-free loops and how, you know, people create narratives around them. A lot of people think like, oh man, you put out a sample and yeah, it became a big record and you know, that's it. Like that's your one shot. When in all reality, like some people are like eating really good.
I'll speak just from our vantage point. I mean, we were royalty free before Splice. That's what made it even easier for us to come on board with Splice. We're happy to be a part of the team now for, like I said, you know, the last 4 or 5 years. I know some folks run into issues with, you know, some of the white labeling and things you mentioned, like, you know, the content ID thing. But I think for the most part, a lot of folks aren't. That's what's kind of just been easy. And like, yeah, we all have careers because of it. It is lucrative if folks want to get in on this side. It's just been a huge blessing making, you know, music careers in a way that we just didn't really see it for ourselves, you know, 5 years ago.
I feel like that was the perfect answer right there. The fact that you guys even took time out of your day to even shed light on your creative process, as well as, you know, gems about business and even some backstory. It's like, can't thank you guys enough. There's this misconception of like, oh, you just got to go through it to go through it. And it's like, for sure. But as Pharrell said, you got to share the codes. You know what I'm saying? Because then everybody will win. It's enough out here for everybody. The fact that you guys even gave me an ounce of your time, truly grateful for that.
Man, thank you for having us. Like, we haven't really done this, I don't think, ever, and we want to share as much as we can with folks.
We're honored you're highlighting people like us. Like you said when we talked to you first time, you're saying no one's talking about sample makers or people doing what we do. So thank you for putting the spotlight on us for a moment.
With that being said, guys, I appreciate you for your time. Now you're probably wondering, why did I even make this video? Well, I felt like the world needed to hear about who these geniuses are. You know, when we use these samples on Splice, they come from a place. There's a story about them. They don't just come from thin air. And the fact that I was not only able to shed light on who they are, but I was also able to give you guys some creative insight as well as business insight. A lot of people aren't willing to do that because they are jaded from their experiences being in the music industry. So they're not willing to share that type of information. But like Pharrell has always said, you gotta share the codes. So don't just watch this and listen and like and comment. I want you to apply what they've said in this video because it just might change the trajectory of your life. I wanted to take this moment to dedicate this video to 2 very important figures in our culture, DJ Clark Kent and the greatest producer to ever live, Quincy Jones. They both have some classics that have not only impacted our lives, but they've impacted culture globally. All because they decided to act on what they love, which is music. So I hope you enjoyed this video. You know, I had to show the Arterix. But with that being said, my name is Isaac Duarte, and I will catch you guys next time.